All right, all right, all right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pod on the Go show. I'm Raz. I'm the host. I am also the owner of Pod on the Go, and I've started a new show. I've launched dozens of podcasts at this point in my career in the business, and you know, I'm just gonna start live streaming content every day, or every day of the week. So we'll see how it goes. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I would love to get any feedback or questions you have as we go. This is the second time I recorded this. The stream didn't go live like I thought it would, so let's see if it works this time. Uh, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Let's get started. So we are in 2021, and it's the theme this week is going to be new beginnings. There's a lot of people looking to launch a podcast this year. They spent all last year listening to podcasts, and they say, "Hey, I can do it too." So this year, lockdown hopefully will be over this year. COVID and Corona-19 will hopefully be taken care of, and people are going to start wanting to get back into the studios and get back into podcasting and grow their business and grow their digital platform. So podcasting is going to be a huge part of that. So if you're watching this, and this is podcasting 101 today, it's going to be just for new podcasters. You can listen to it if you're old podcasters, but this is very, very basic information that I'll be able to share with new clients as I get them. But also, hopefully, maybe you can learn something as well, whoever's watching this. So today we're talking about choosing a podcast host. It is a very, very important part of podcasting, choosing the right host that's appropriate for you, one that is going to allow you to grow with them, and one that is going to fit in your budget. And it's a few things, but we'll talk about that in just a second. First things first, here are some of the industry leaders you should look into. Libsyn, Podbean, Blueberry, Simplecast, Buzzsprout, Anchor FM. You can also do one, I didn't mention it here, but Squarespace, the website host, also has a plan where you can create your own podcast host through your website, which is really cool. You can link link both of them together, which will be, keep things simple. So how do you choose the appropriate host? Well, here's a few things you should probably consider. Number one is your budget. How much are you willing to spend on a host? Hosts can range anywhere from free to $100+ a month. And if you're a new beginner, you're probably going to be close to the free. But just like anything, you get what you pay for. When you buy, whenever something says free, you're not, you're the product. You know what I mean? It's like you're not buying a product, you are the product when there are things that are free. So Anchor, whenever they say that they're free, they also put in their logo on top of your podcast art, your podcast cover art. So now, people, now you're advertising for them as well. So it's a give and take. Not to say they're bad hosts, and they're also great for some people's podcasts. If starting a podcast, if the difference is between paying $5 a month or $10 a month and doing a free podcast, then do Anchor and get started and build an audience. And then you can either grow with Anchor or you can switch to another one. Another thing to consider is how often are you going to post? Some podcast hosts, charge by storage amounts, not by frequency, but by how much storage you're going to need on their hosting site. So that's something to keep in mind. And it might be worth, recording a hour-long podcast first, and then, seeing how large that file is before choosing a host. Because if you're going to record an hour-long podcast every week, then you need a host that can handle that amount of storage space for the price that's inside of your budget. Ease of use. How easy is it to use? Is it as simple as posting a website? Do they syndicate your episodes to all of the platforms that you want it to go to? iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. Do they send it to everything, or do they give you, most hosts do give you the link, but some make it easier to syndicate, by just through links or relationships they have with these companies. Innovation. So Libsyn is the go-to. Libsyn is an industry standard. You can't go wrong with Libsyn. But they look the exact same as they did when I first started podcasting back in 2013. Libsyn has the same exact layout on their website, and I don't know how much they're innovating, but they're solid, very solid podcasts. It's like a Ford Taurus. You know, it's gonna go for 300,000 miles. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna go wrong with Libsyn. But are they a Tesla? I don't know. You know, they're not innovating like Tesla. They're not doing cool things with their website, but they're a solid performer. And if that's what you want, and honestly, at the end of the day, that might be what you want from a podcast host. It's just up to you. Free versus paid. I kind of already talked about that. Analytics is a huge part. How are the analytics? Is it easy to download and you know, the analytics from the site? Is it easy to see at a glance who's listening to you, where they're from, any demographics they have, what country, city, or state they're coming from? That's a big part of growing your ad revenue for your podcast is analytics, because you're able to find sponsors for your specific audience. So just something to, you know, keep in mind. Customer service. Are they easy to talk to? Do they help you? Do they have a comprehensive FAQ on their website? Do they create blog posts that help their customers? You know, so if you're stuck on deciding on one, ask friends for recommendations. And if you don't have any other friends that are podcasters because they're lame, then find your favorite podcasters. Go to their website and see who their host is. It's a great way to just start out and try. A couple more things to keep in mind that I wouldn't have thought of before I started is, can you switch a podcast host, your first podcast host, easily to another one? Most podcast hosts do allow you to make the switch easily, but it's a hassle. So it's good to think about and find a host that you think you can grow with, because switching is easy on a lot of platforms, but it's a hassle at the same time, because you have to delete things from there, and your podcast might be down for a day or a few hours while the switch happens. So it's just something to keep in mind. So if you're still struggling, make a list of pros and cons of every host that you like, that you think about. Go to their different websites. Go to Blueberry. Go to Libsyn. Go to Squarespace, and make lists of pros and cons. You know, the pricing, their ease of use, the customer service, their communication, their blog posts, everything you can think of. Find recommendations from other podcast hosts, and just make pros and cons. And ask a friend, ask a family member, somebody you know the podcast already, and that's the easiest way. You should do it, but I wouldn't take too much time on it. And especially as a newbie, the goal is just to get started. You're not going to learn anything by analyzing it. A lot of what you're going to learn is from starting, and that's the hardest part for some podcasters, to start. The next hardest thing is to keep going. So if you're struggling, my favorite podcast host to recommend, and they don't pay me to say this, they probably should, and I'll reach out to them one day if you guys subscribe, is Podbean. They charge a very reasonable annual fee of $100 and some change. I don't know the exact figure off the top of my head, but I probably used them for a dozen, over half of the podcasts I've launched, and they work great. They're easy to use. It's just like writing a blog post. If you're familiar with WordPress or or Squarespace, it's just plug and play like that. They allow you to syndicate to iTunes and Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify easily. They offer great analytics. You can look at a map of the world and see, and click on it and zoom in and see who's listening and the demographics of it and how many downloads are coming from each country. So it's a great platform. The only thing is that I don't like about them is the annual fee. If you sign up for them and you pay $109 for the year, and you decide, you know what, I've been doing this a month, I've been doing this 2 months, it's just too much work, I don't want to podcast anymore, then they're still going to keep the entire 100 until the year is over. You're not going to get anything. You're not going to get the parts that you didn't. They keep the entire $100. You can cancel it, but you just have access to it for the rest of the year. But they're not going to prorate anything and give it back to you. So that part kind of sucks. Especially for me, because sometimes I forget. I'll have 2 or 3 podcasts going, and then the podcast stops, or it fails and I forget to cancel it. And the next thing you know, I owe another $200 to Podbean, but just because I didn't check up on it. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're doing one podcast, not a big deal. But if you're like me and you're launching multiple podcasts for multiple clients, sometimes the date of cancellation can get lost, especially if they're not renewing the podcast, continuing the podcast. Another thing to keep in mind is they're not great if you're going to start a podcast network. But again, that is for a different day. We'll talk about that on another day. That's not podcasting one-on-one. That's not a podcasting one-on-one topic. So, yeah. Final thoughts. Choose wisely, but choose quickly. You don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Every podcast host that I just mentioned is a great host. You're not going to go wrong. You're going to be fine. It just depends on which one looks the best to you, which one you can use, you feel most comfortable using, and which one fits in your budget. After you decide on those things, any one you choose is going to be great. All of these podcast hosts are big names in the industry. They have, a track record of success and being a stable host. So you're not going to go wrong. Just choose. If you're still struggling, choose Podbean. They don't pay me. One day they will, and I'll come back and update this video. But just choose and get started, because that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is to get started and to keep going. That's the hardest thing, is to keep going. So choose, start, and even if you make a mistake, like I did with even my first podcast, this is my first time live streaming. I'm doing it by myself. I'm not in the back. I'm in front of the camera, and I'm working the virtual set and the PowerPoint and doing everything together. So, you're gonna make mistakes. I wish I had some outro music. I wish I had some intro music. You're gonna learn as you go. Maybe tomorrow I'll have some. So yeah. So just get out there and get started. This is podcasting in one-on-one. If you make mistakes, that's a good thing, because you learn from them. So you don't have to worry about podcasting when you're just starting out. It's all gonna be fine. And if you need help, you can reach out to us. If you're a studio owner, if you want to go to a studio in person and find an expert, then you can go to podonthego.com and find a podcast studio. Simple as that. All right, guys. Talk to you later. I would love to hear your questions and comments about the podcast. I would love to answer questions on air. So please reach out to me if you have any other questions, whether it's a beginner question, an expert question, a growth question, anything about technology or cameras or whatever. I'm going to start doing these episodes every day. So, yeah, that's it. Talk to you guys later. Peace.